deleted episode of Peppa Pig. On the other side, it was an ordinary day.
Wow.
Grandpa brought the family an old television. It looked strange, but it immediately turned on. It was showing memories, happy and familiar. But sometimes there was something extra in these scenes. At night, Peppa woke up to a strange crackling sound. The TV turned on by itself. It showed Mom, but with eyes that looked empty, erased, just for a second. In the morning, the scene repeated. Only Peppa noticed. During the day, everything seemed normal. No one believed Peppa's stories. A little later, she saw Daddy Pig. He wasn't blinking. He was just staring.
See, Daddy, you see, something's wrong.
Daddy Pig monotonously replied, "We've all been here before." Peppa searched for an explanation. With each day, everything in the house became stranger. Peppa whispered,
Mom?
She answered emotionlessly.
Don't look for too long, Peppa. You'll see too much.
Daddy disappeared. The screen hummed as if it knew this would happen. Peppa decided to act. She pulled at the TV cord, but it sank into the floor and disappeared. The TV had never been plugged in, never before. Now it showed only fear and nothing else. On the screen, family members without faces, Peppa inside it. She screamed but made no sound. Peppa tore off George's toy hammer and struck the TV. The screen cracked. From inside, thick black liquid flowed out. Something unpleasant and dark seeped outward. The TV was gone, but distorted reflections remained. Some things don't turn off, even if the screen is no longer there. The deleted episode of Peppa Pig. The porcelain doll. Peppa finds an old, dusty toy box in the attic. Inside is a large doll with a porcelain face, but it doesn't have a face, just a smooth white oval. "What a strange doll," says Peppa, looking at her. George looks at the doll with apprehension and hides behind his mother. At night, it seems to Peppa that the doll is looking at her. She hears quiet whispers from her room, even though no one is there. The next morning, the doll is in a different place. Peppa tries to get rid of the doll,
but it always comes back.
One day, while playing with George, Peppa draws the doll's face with a marker pen. At first, it's funny, but at night, the face on the doll changes. Now it's an evil grimace with sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. Peppa is terrified. She realizes that the doll is alive and something bad is happening. She runs to Mama Piggy, but she doesn't believe her. At night, Peppa wakes up from the cold. She sees a doll by her bed. The doll stretches its porcelain hand towards her. Peppa screams, but no one comes. In the morning, Peppa disappears. George is playing alone in the garden, but he is no longer grunting with joy. He holds a faceless doll in his hands. Piggy's mom and dad are standing at the window, their faces full of despair. Their voices are barely audible. "Where is our Peppa?" Deleted Peppa Pig episode. One word. It was an ordinary day. She was sitting in the playroom playing with a ball. Suddenly, it started rolling slowly across the floor by itself. She looked at it in surprise. The ball stopped near the wall, and suddenly a strange rustling sound was heard, like someone whispering behind her back. Peppa turned around. Nobody was there. Suddenly, the toys began to move on their own. Dolls swayed without wind. Cars rolled across the floor without her involvement. Peppa was frightened and looked into the mirror. Her reflection was terrifying. Her eyes darkened and her smile widened more than usual. Suddenly, the toys disappeared. The room grew darker. A shadow appeared in the mirror, rapidly approaching Peppa. She tried to turn away, but the mirror seemed to suck her inside. She didn't notice how she fell into it head first. Peppa found herself in a strange, dark cave. A piercing scream shattered the silence. Turning around, she saw many small, poor piglets who had been trapped there for several years. She realized that escaping on her own and rescuing these little ones was her mission. Illuminating the walls with a flashlight, she saw mysterious symbols resembling a cipher. She struggled for a long time to figure out how to rearrange the elements to form a word. Suddenly, it came to her. She quickly drew the symbols in the correct order and obtained the word love. Suddenly, the walls trembled, stones rained down, and the cave collapsed with a loud crash. The piglets were set free. They found themselves on a bright meadow bathed in sunlight. The little pigs thanked Peppa, and she rejoiced at her new friends. They were celebrating when they didn't notice someone watching them from behind a tree. Deleted Peppa Pig episode, The Living Toy. George loved his dinosaur, but that day, the toy fell into a place where it shouldn't have gone. George didn't know. Some toys find their owners on their own. When George disappeared, Peppa decided to look for him, but she had no idea. She would have to search not for her brother, but for what had taken him. The trail led to the nursery, where it all began. The door to the nursery swung open, and Peppa saw a giant dinosaur holding George in its claws.
Give him back!
Peppa shouted, but the dinosaur already knew his name. Peppa tried to rescue her brother, but the dinosaur swatted her away with its tail. George mumbled. His voice sounded strange, as if the dinosaur was learning how to be hidden. Peppa grabbed a toy hammer and struck the dinosaur's paw. It dropped George.
Run!
Peppa yelled, but George didn't move. His eyes turned red. In the morning, George returned, but Peppa saw that now the dinosaur was always watching him. At night, a voice was heard behind the door.
The little dinosaur. Mine.
He waiting, because children can be lost so easily, especially when they think they've been found. Deleted episode of Peppa Pig, The Evil Force. An ordinary day, Peppa decided to draw, starting with a simple apple. But something went wrong, and the apple simply dissolved into reality. Peppa couldn't believe her eyes. Her desire to test her new power led to the next step. Each new drawing disappeared from her world. Soon, Peppa realized her power knew no bounds. She left home in the name of experimentation and set a new goal: the school. Every stroke of her marker became a new threat. The school began to vanish from reality. The facade flickered and dissolved away. Peppa looked at the empty field. She felt like a god in a world of ink, but someone was watching her, always watching. Peppa sensed that something was wrong and decided to return, but what she saw shocked her, freezing her with fear. The room seemed empty, but that was a lie. Sitting before her was her doppelganger, drawing something. With each stroke, he recreated her appearance, frightening and alien. Peppa froze in horror, realizing her power had gained its own will. The doppelganger looked at her with hollow eyes as she slowly dissolved into the space, unable to save herself. Deleted episode of Peppa Pig, The Attic Mystery. It all started as an ordinary day. Peppa, George, and Mummy Pig were preparing homemade treats in the kitchen, while Daddy Pig fixed an old television in the living room. Cheerful music played, creating a cozy atmosphere. Peppa decided to play hide-and-seek with George. She shouted,
I'm counting to 10.
And closed her eyes. George quickly ran to hide behind the sofa, trying not to make any noise. Peppa began searching for George. She looked under the table, behind the sofa, and even inside the closet, but he was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, she remembered the old attic ladder they had never used before.
Maybe he's hiding up there?
thought Peppa, feeling her heart beat faster. She quietly approached the door leading to the attic and noticed it was slightly open. Inside was dark, and a sharp smell of dust hit her nose. Peppa hesitated, but curiosity overcame her fear. She began cautiously climbing the ladder. A faint light seeped through a small light bulb. Peppa took a few steps forward when her foot brushed against something soft. She bent down and found George's doll, but with a distorted face, as if someone had mutilated it. A cold shiver ran down Peppa's spine.
George, are you here?
She called out, but only a faint echo responded. Suddenly, she heard a strange noise, like someone whispering from the darkness. Peppa turned around but saw no one. Her heart pounded faster and she decided to go back. But halfway down the ladder, she heard children's laughter echoing as if coming from deep within the attic. The laughter grew louder and louder, and overwhelmed by fear, Peppa grabbed the door handle. When she returned home, Mummy and Daddy noticed her frightened face.
Where's George?
Asked Mummy Pig, but Peppa only shook her head. At that moment, a sound came from inside the house, like someone knocking from behind the wall.
That's George!
Exclaimed Peppa, and without waiting for her parents, she rushed back to the ladder. She saw George's doll lying on the floor next to an old, worn-out diary. Peppa opened it and found entries about how some children had gone missing in this house many years ago. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut behind her, leaving Peppa alone in the darkness. She heard a raspy voice coming from behind the walls.
Peppa, I found you. Now you're part of our game.